Ma died the night the four Pearce kids welcomed their brother Joseph to the world. It was 6 weeks later that Grandpa Harrison rode into town after dark with an empty wagon and headed towards the house. Papa Joe was exhausted from a full day in the field and a grieving, and he put the light out soon after dark. One by one, the kids were awakened with a hand over their mouth and snuck out to the awaiting wagon. Within minutes, all 5 kids were hidden in the floor of the wagon, covered by blankets and hay. Now, just 6 weeks after losing their ma, they were all taken from Pa. When Papa Joe woke that morning, his kids had been kidnapped across state lines by his dead wife's father. He saddled his horse, and he rode south a-calling their names: Holland, Lazarus, Simmons, Mary, and Joseph. It were Holland that was the oldest, and she worked to keep the group together. And she accepted Joseph with mixed emotions of love and grief and anger all at once. Of all the children, it were Joseph that would come to favor his mother the most, and it always pained the other children to look at him. Lazarus was the eldest boy and had a willingness and ability to tackle most any job, and usually could be found hunting and fishing with his brother Simmons in the woods and streams of upper Mississippi. Now, it was about that time that Pa had been hiring lawyers and trying to kidnap the kids the best he could. The Harrisons had more wealth, power, and were on home ground. They had no intentions of giving up their grandchildren, and so Joseph languished. Years went by, and the children grew in their new environment. Holland now spent time reading and dreaming about her future. She would turn 18 in a year and come into her own. She had many notable suitors, but found herself falling for a flamboyant, dashing, sometimes boisterous young man, William Faulkner. He regaled her with stories and tales, true and false, of tragedies and comedies. Years before the old colonel would entertain his troops on the train during war, he lifted the spirits of a young woman, and he fell in love with Holland. They soon married. Holland's inheritance allowed them to purchase 320 acres for $2,200, and they settled down into their new home. And it weren't long before they were expecting. As Holland drew closer and closer to delivery, her unbounded joy in love, marriage, and expectant child began to sour. Just slightly at first. She'd catch a sideways view of Joseph, and the pain of missing her mother would come flooding back. Her mother had safely delivered 4 children and had succumbed on the 5th, she reminded herself. The nagging fear and doubt would not go away. And as her belly grew, so did her fear. William knew little of this, and would have been a little help even if he did. A cavalier, "Onward, my dear lady," would have been his response. He did love her, and he made sure she was comfortable and wanted for nothing. John Wesley Thompson Faulkner was born to an exuberant father and an exhausted and half-broken mother. While Holland's body was broken, her spirit was not. She held the infant child and nursed and rocked him to her breast as she hummed and sang sweet songs. Holland passed away just the age of 19. Left her estate to be stewarded by her husband, the colonel, for her son John when he came of age. Lazarus Pearce picked up his baby nephew and cried. Uncle. He'd already lost his father, uncle, mother, and sister. John was new life for the family. He felt something strange growing in his chest. It hurt. It was hope. Lazarus was an industrious and adventurous young man. He, like many, left for California to seek fortune in the gold fields. Upon his return, he settled into a modest life, farming and raising a family. In the early 1860s, all the news seemed bad. It was against this backdrop that one day Lazarus saw his brother-in-law on horseback riding up the lane. The two men embraced and sat on the porch smoking and drinking, the colonel and Laz. Laz, I'm raising a regiment of fighters to take it to those damn Yankees, and I want you to join me. Sign up now, and you'll get paid. Plus, I'll make sure you get transferred to my unit, said the now Colonel Faulkner. Lazarus looked at his 4 children and thought it over. He had since lost his wife to childbirth and was raising the children alone. The colonel had remarried with a large family, and the Harrison cousins could help look after the little ones. Plus, he needed the money. Lazarus enlisted, and the colonel himself signed the $50 receipt. The tales of battles and trials and tribulations of the war were extensive. Lazarus and the colonel fought side by side. The colonel, however, lost an election for commanding, and the future governor of Mississippi took over. Thereby, the old colonel gave up his commission and headed back to Ripley to raise a new regiment. Lazarus, nonetheless, continued on, whereby he was wounded at Gaines' Mill in the wrist and lungs. He recovered at Richmond Hospital and rejoined his regiment. Lazarus's last great war charge was the South's last charge, Pickett's. Lazarus, in the thick of it, completed the charge only to find himself outmanned, outgunned, and out of options. He was captured and sent to what was then known as Hell on Earth, a prisoner of war camp on Pea Patch Island in the middle of the Delaware. The cemetery across the river in New Jersey is filled with thousands of dead prisoners from disease, malnutrition, and exposure. The open lean-tos and barracks provided no relief from the cold, and the swamp-like ground bred disease everywhere. Lazarus had been in prison for over a year when his father-in-law, when his brother-in-law, George Holcomb, came through the walls, part of a prisoner release exchange. Lazarus got trusted news of the war and how it was going. He realized that he was in for a long time. He made a fateful decision to escape. He coordinated with George to inform the Confederate authorities that he died in prison. At the same time, he enlisted a colleague of similar height and look to impersonate him for prison roll call. Believing he had set it so that neither the Confederates nor the Yankees would be looking for him, he set about to prepare for his swim away to freedom from both armies. There were many downsides to his plan, but the hardest to swallow was knowing that his family would think him dead. Better a chance at life believed dead than dead with no chance at life, he said. He saved what little rations he could, collected spare canteens, pair of shoes, and waited for the new moon. The night Lazarus slipped into the water, he hoped would be dark and silent. It was not. Lightning and thunder cracked the sky and lit the water. He felt for sure he'd be seen and caught. But while the storm and lightning exposed him, it flashed away and also drove the guards indoors. He emerged muddy, cold, alone, and a long way from home, and one that he couldn't go to. He was an outlaw rebel on the run, free for the first time. Lazarus's family mourned his death. Only the elders knew that Lazarus lived. They couldn't risk one of the kids letting it slip, so they kept the secret and let their little hearts break for the chance of his resurrection. 3 months after the war ended, Lazarus's oldest son, Levi, and John Faulkner, with his first daughter, Holland, were sitting on the porch, and off in the distance, a shadow emerged in the dust and rose taller as the form took shape into the strides of a man coming back from the dead. John turned to Levi and said, "That's your pa."